What's going on, ladies and gents? Robert Sikes, KetoSavage.com, and today I have special guest Barton Scott on the line, and we're going to dive into all things electrolytes. How are you, Barton?
Hey, great to be here.
Awesome to have you, man. We met at KetoCon, and let's just get a little background here. You came up to me. I don't remember what started the conversation, but you started talking to me about electrolytes, and immediately had my interest because there's so much confusion around electrolytes, and just how to optimize and manipulate them to kind of really improve your performance. So, give me a little background on you and kind of what brought you into this space and what makes you an expert on electrolytes in the first place.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of things that I could talk about, but I guess just in terms of training, I'd studied nutrition since I was 12 or 13, but it wasn't until I went through chemical engineering and then I started to think in terms of nutrition, but with the lens of chemistry and chemical engineering. So what I eventually did, really out of necessity, with my fixing my own health, was I did a hair analysis, and it was the first actionable test I'd ever done.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd done a lot of testing. I'd spent a lot of money on testing because I was fit, but I was not healthy. So there's a big difference, as you know, I'm sure, in having a six pack and being healthy.
Right.
And sometimes they're one and the same, sometimes they're not, right? So and the thing is when you're really fit, you feel like you have no room to complain because maybe you're more fit than all your friends. So what I did eventually was I figured out how to make minerals, including electrolytes like magnesium and potassium, absorb a lot better without digestion. So it sounds really complicated, but you just have to get them small enough to get into the red blood cell, into the mitochondria, so they can go to work for you without having to be digested. And then I realized, well, a lot of people won't either understand the science, maybe they won't believe the science, and I want them to try it because I know it's going to make a huge difference. So what if we used hair testing and we did a before and after for them, or that was an option for them at least. They could buy the products, but they could more importantly test before and after and supplement in between only what they needed and see those levels move in the direction they want. So that's some of what we'll talk about today.
I love it. I feel like, electrolytes, especially if you're on the keto diet, you hear the, quote unquote keto flu, and it's electrolyte related. You don't really know what to manipulate. But if you do things incorrectly, you wind up just feeling terrible. And if you just simply mitigate that by, having the proper electrolyte levels, it makes all the difference in the world. So I'm excited to dive into what can be, like, what levers can be adjusted. And I didn't even know that you could use hair testing as a means to do this. When you came up to me and we were talking at KetoCon, you handed me this envelope and you were like, all right, just cut some of your hair, stick it in here and mail it back to me. And we test your electrolytes. And I'm just like listening to you like, okay, this guy's crazy. But then I'm like, this makes perfect sense. You kept talking. I'm like, okay, this is intriguing for sure. So that was a whole story in itself. Like I was here at the compound trying to figure out, had my wife cut my armpit hair and had one of my employees bring it to the mailbox. So ship my hair off to you, and we just got the results back today. So I'm excited to dive into what these numbers mean and how they can be changed.
Absolutely. A deep emotional reason why I do this and why I think a lot of people are drawn to this is that, really when you think about doctors and you think about going and get your blood drawn, it's so interesting because, a lot of people from a psychological perspective will avoid going to a doctor because maybe they don't exactly like the needle. So we tried to do, it's something we did away with this kit.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I think about is that I personally, respect is really important to me. I just feel like so many people get disrespected when they go to a doctor's office, maybe not intentionally, but it's like drive across town, sit there, get there on time, wait an hour to see someone. And then because they're in a hurry, it's not necessarily their fault, but because they're in a hurry, you have a list of questions. They don't have time to get through all of them. And really what they're telling you the whole time is you're not that important.
Right.
And people don't love that, you know, and I personally was really frustrated by that process too. So really the overall arching mission for people is I want to make not us, the company at Upgraded Formulas, the hero. I want to make them the hero of their own health so that they can take back the power of at least understanding where they're at globally in their health. Um, and you'll see, I'm saying that because you'll see when we talk about these levels, we're not just talking about minerals, which drive everything in the body. We're talking about thyroid expression, adrenal expression, and what those, how, you know, basically how you're all, everything you're doing from a health perspective, whether it's how much you're working, what you're eating, how much you're lifting, all of this kind of combines into a picture that we can read through your health or through your hair. And yeah, it's really impactful. So,
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming like a hair sample is going to be a much, you know, better indicator of like your health over a longer period of time than like a blood test or something, which can change very rapidly. Like you can, I mean, you can change your cholesterol numbers just based off the food you eat the night before you get a blood test. Whereas I mean, again, I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming with a hair
yeah.
sample, it's kind of going over a longer period of time.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And that's really the reason why we do it, because with blood, you'd be diagnosing someone off of a snapshot.
Hmm.
With hair, you're looking at the last 6 to 8 weeks of data. For some people, it's a little less because their hair grows faster. So we have some people that test and retest every month, and that's really on the extreme side of things for sure. But yeah, if you're coming up for you know, a competition or something, it's really key. Or if you have some extreme health challenge, it's really key just to check in and see where you're at. And instead of do what, you know, a lot of people, what they're doing, whether they realize it or not, is they're guessing with their health. They're using their
Hmm.
intuition. They're using things that they know to be true generally. And what we're doing is, you know, this is not my opinion. This is what's going on factually in the body. So yeah, absolutely.
And I'm assuming also that there's so many, like with the blood testing, there's so many, markers and parameters that are, quote unquote, in the proper window. But a lot of those are based off of, um, a downward trending health, total health overall. So it's not really even a good parameter to try and be in.
Exactly. Yeah, those are typically pulled from diseased populations. Unfortunately, I think that's what you're alluding to there. You know, which is like not what. Oh, hey, you're in the middle of the range, so you're about average when it comes to. Yeah, that's not what we want to judge off of, right? So
Not at all. So cool deal, man. You want to just dive into? I've got the test pulled up here, and I'll have to just include. This might be a little hard for people listening, but I'll just include like these test numbers in the show notes or something. Um,
sure,
but
sure.
yeah, I guess just as best you can, kind of portray an audio version what people could expect to see from these numbers and what these numbers mean.
Absolutely. So when you look at your test, what you see that we're testing 15 different nutritional elements, things like calcium, copper, chromium, zinc, magnesium, sodium, potassium, you know, so on and so forth. We're also looking at additional elements that are pretty rare, like lithium or germanium, that have an impact, though less than these primary. And then we're also looking at 8 toxic elements, things like mercury and aluminum, arsenic, etc. So because those will have an antagonistic relationship. What does that mean? Antagonistic means it interferes with these important things, you know, and all the processes that, for example, magnesium or zinc contribute to. So yeah, to jump right in, what we normally start off with, just to give people a format, is I ask a few questions, and those are, what are your top 3 goals? Are you on current medications? Which, you know, publicly, you don't have to answer that or anything. Um, Current diet, sleep habits, things like that, right? So if anything jumps out there, like, hey, yeah, I'm sleeping 3 hours a night. I can't, I have extreme insomnia. Certainly let me know. The current diet, I think I have a pretty good feel for that. I think recently you were eating. Are you still doing the 6,000 calorie a day, or has that ended?
No, I'm doing about 4,000 calories a day now. Obviously, ketogenic macros, higher fat intake, um, just in a caloric surplus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. Well, great. We'll jump right in. What the 80/20 of this analysis, Robert, is really the 7 significant ratios. What those are things like calcium to phosphorus, zinc to copper, sodium to magnesium. So what we'll do for the purposes of this, just to give people a good overview without talking about everything, which could be hours and hours, I'll run through what those are, and then we'll talk about what they represent.
Sounds
How's
great
that?
to me.
Okay, awesome. So first off, we have calcium to phosphorus, and this really represents, so calcium to phosphorus represents parasympathetic and calcium specifically is parasympathetic nervous system. Your phosphorus is more on the sympathetic side, right? So based on your number right here, 2.6 is an ideal number, and you're right at that, which makes sense because of the macros that you're eating, right? Because what this really shows is it's a function of or demonstration of your metabolism. So you're in a nice range right there. So there's a couple other areas we'll focus on, but just for people listening too, that kind of clam up when they think about testing, if it's always there's always I guess good news too. Robert's going to make it.
Yeah, I'm gonna
uh,
live.
there's going to be more podcasts to come. So, uh, but some people get this kind of underlying fear, I think, associated with testing. I really just wanted to calm people when they think about that, and help them remember that. I know you're good at this, but help them remember generally that if there was nothing to optimize, there would be no reason to test, right?
Right, right.
And then lastly, of course, by optimizing, we do things like prevent or certainly push off disease states and early aging. So yeah, it's really health from the inside out, and this is really the largest area of leverage you can get in your health, and that's the reason why I focus on minerals and not vitamins.
Hmm.
Um, for example, or any number of other things that we can change, any other levers we can turn. So yeah, moving on, your sodium to potassium. All right, so this one is a little bit low. So what this is representing is its expression of your adrenal glands and your kidneys. So the suggestion here, I know you're still consuming, quite a bit of food every day. So it's natural to have a bit of a burden on the kidneys, and with
Hmm.
this ratio being the way it is, it does suggest a burden on the kidneys potentially, and that can be seen through high amounts of protein. Again, knowing consciously what you're doing. I wouldn't say it's a huge problem right now. You're not off the charts high or anything, but you're in that elevated range. Um, but you know what you're doing. You have a goal kind of midterm for that. But I would say it's something you want to continue to keep in mind, certainly.
And that's it's like the sodium for me. I scored 56. Um, and then the ideal range is what they're right around the looks like 36.
Yeah, so it's right in there. What we really want to, what's even more important than these elements individually, say sodium to potassium, you're elevated in both of those, for example, and that's really the only elevation that you have across the board. Uh, with those, what you want to look at is you want to look at them in relation to calcium and magnesium. So yeah, so what we'll do is we'll cut through some of these other ratios, and I think everyone will have a really good feel for it. But yeah, that's
Gotcha.
That's what most people, and certainly some people that give results on this test, they'll just ignore the ratios, which are actually more important than the individual minerals themselves. And they'll just tell you, hey, you're low in this thing. And by the way, you're high in this thing. And you're like, yeah, thanks. I can see that. But what does it mean? you know? So that's,
So if I've got a
uh,
if I've got an elevated sodium potassium ratio, would that suggest that I need to decrease any sodium and potassium supplementation, or what can I concur from there?
yeah, so that's where we're heading next, and that's a good question. Really, what I would say is that if you spend more time sweating, so infrared sauna, you're going to move some of that, and then looking holistically at what we're seeing visually from this chart, you do have a little bit of mercury and you have some aluminum. So
Hmm.
something keeping this in mind and understanding that, what I would suggest is infrared sauna to be able to penetrate those three levels of tissue and chelate those heavy metals. And in the process, you're sweating more and you're bringing down both sodium and potassium. So
Gotcha.
sometimes, yeah, sometimes when we see elevated levels like this, it's really just because the kidneys are working hard and they're retaining potassium and sodium. So yeah, and that could be switching off of eating 6,000 calories a day every day for a continued period, and now you're reduced, but still consuming a lot. So it's really
Makes
just
sense.
a retention. Yeah, certainly. So let's see. All right. So number 3, calcium to potassium. So right there, calcium to potassium, you're a little bit low here at 0.77. The ideal's 4.20. What does that mean? Well, calcium to potassium, that shows you the thyroid expression that you have and also adrenal activity. In your case, you have elevation of thyroid expression and adrenal activity. So you have good energy, but we want to make sure that we sustain that. So one other ratio we'll look at really quick is calcium to magnesium. So what that shows is basically that ratio, calcium magnesium, is regulated by your parathyroid to thyroid balance. And what being high in that ratio, which you are, you have parathyroid dominance. So one way we can shift that, two ways actually. One, we can supplement iodine. The other, even more directly, we supplement magnesium. So that ties in with calming that thyroid expression that we see in calcium to potassium and also your adrenal activity. If some people are like, wow, I got to hit pause on this, just know that what we're doing is, this is not something, basically I'm teaching Robert how to give an analysis right now and understand his own. And no one has to do that. That's what our consultations are for. So I just wanted to pause for a second. Yeah.
Yeah,
How,
makes sense.
how are we doing so far though? Yeah.
No, we're good, man. I'm
It's a
following
lot of
along.
new info. Right? Okay. Okay, great. All right. So moving on to our zinc and copper ratio. Now, zinc and copper, what is your ratio, by the way? Very good on this. Um, so zinc to copper, that's related to your SOD pathways. So SOD, that's, you probably know this, but, for anyone listening, that's superoxide dismutase. And what that really represents is um, thyroid pathways in the body. It also represents virus and bacterial infections, either current, chronic, or past. And then elevation of progesterone or testosterone in this case is kind of a dominance right there. So you can see a lot by just looking at a ratio. Now, when you look at the chart yourself, all you see is zinc/copper, a number 8.46, and that it's within the acceptable range. Doesn't really tell you what's going on. Again, I'm just kind of giving you guys background, right? To show you all the different things between the numbers that exist. So pretty cool, right? Pretty fascinating.
No, I like this for sure. Where do you see the 8.46?
Yeah, 8.46. So really your ideal, because 8 is it's a fairly large range for this one, and you're sitting at you know basically perfect
And
on that one.
again, for anybody listening, I'm gonna put this slide in the show notes, so you might want to have that slide open as you're listening to this, or you might get a little confused.
Yeah, certainly, certainly. Yeah, we're looking at the 7 significant ratios on page 2. If you've either done a hair test with us or you plan on doing one, what a lot of people do is they'll do a test. They'll order 2 tests at a time, 2 consultations at a time. They will, just to get a baseline, they'll test. They'll go through the consult. When the results come in, they'll supplement what they need to supplement. They'll stop doing anything they need to stop doing. And then 7 weeks later, after doing that first test, they'll send their results in for a second time and do that second consultation. When those results come in, and then now they should be, if they follow the instructions, they should be in a much different place, healthier, happier, more energy, better sleep, you name it. So, yeah.
I like it. I like it.
Anyway. Yep. So what else? All right. What else is important? What else sticks out? So we have the sodium to magnesium ratio. So what this really shows us in this particular case is that your adrenals are working a bit harder than we would like them to work long term, at least. So what do? Well, we want to support them and also calm them with magnesium. Magnesium is a sedative mineral, and what that'll do is, anytime you're really pushing the go button in life, in work, in relationship, your response to stress will be able to be more measured. We've all had days, months, maybe years where we were more reactive to stress, and then other times when we were better balanced in our health where we were less reactive. And we felt like we had that choice to choose that space between stimulus and response, right? So,
Is there any particular type of magnesium that you would recommend? I know there's several different varieties. Is there like a particular one that absorbs better?
certainly. So that's really the heart of what we do as a company. So upgraded magnesium is a magnesium chloride that's gone through a process to be absorbed instantly in the body. What that means is, now, granted, we have capsules where you pull them apart and you travel with them, but and it's easier to travel with our liquid product, which is out of stock right now anyway. But the capsules are really neat because you can put them in a bag and they travel easily, and just pull them apart if you don't like swallowing a capsule. So what that means is, people talk about threonate and they go, oh, well, it crosses the blood-brain barrier. Well, ours gets into blood cells. All of our products are small enough to get into your mitochondria of your blood cells without being digested. And we're seeing that technology in other areas. It's a little bit different than what I developed, but liposomal for fat-soluble things is really interesting as well. So really, we're on the edge of nanoscience as it applies to nutrition and medicine. So this is the way to go. Can I tell you a story for a moment that I just heard yesterday on this?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I just did a Facebook Live with Lindsay Matthews. She's a trainer, and she's been on, in her own words, sleeping meds for the last 20 years. She's been taking magnesium for the last 5 years or so. And, she wasn't able to ever get off her sleeping meds. In 1 to 2 months of taking upgraded magnesium, again, in her words, you can check out the live. I shared it on my personal page. In her own words, she hasn't taken sleeping meds in a while now. She's been able to get off of them completely. She's felt like she didn't need them. And that was just due to that one product. So it shows you the essential nature especially of magnesium. So, yeah.
Another nice thing about your product, and I haven't used it extensively. I just had a little sample of it that you gave me at KetoCon there, but you don't have to. It doesn't require that much quantity because it absorbs much easier. So you don't get the GI stress that comes with a huge bolus of magnesium or sodium, potassium, like you would with a lot of other things, because since it's absorbed, basically 100% of it, you don't have to take in near as much.
Exactly. Yeah, that's something that people look at and they go, oh, well, why doesn't it have more? It's like, believe me, you don't need more because this might be the only product you're taking. And then that just allows you to throw out the balance of other minerals in your body so much easier. So we could have given you more, and that wouldn't have been a big deal for us to do. But really, everything, as we're seeing with these ratios, right, Robert, is that it's the ratio. It's not just let's just take a heck of a lot of something, right? So
Right.
yeah, certainly. That's another great point to mention. All right, what else? All right, so we talked about calcium and magnesium, um, and then now lastly we have iron to copper. So with that, what we're looking at is thyroid function, neurological function, and cellular respiration. Really good news there. Your iron to copper ratio looks really good. Ideal is 0.9. You're at 0.77. So, pretty much exactly where you want to be. Yeah. So before we move on, any thoughts or questions?
No, that all makes pretty good sense there. So the main red flag, it looks like, is my uh, sodium to magnesium is considerably elevated, which probably is a result of the caloric surplus and just the stressors I'm putting on my body. But I think that would probably be equalize out once I'm in more of a maintenance or even a slight deficit. Probably, I would assume so. Anyways,
Yeah, I would think so. I think your kidneys are just in some cases getting a little backlogged, so they're retaining a little bit. But yeah, you can certainly drop your sodium intake, and that is something I'd recommend, because as you do that, and as you supplement magnesium, those two work together to bring that ratio down. So now your body's just operating with less stress, which is great. So,
I do have a quick question for you.
uh huh, uh huh.
There's so basically what I've found is you can kind of reset your body's homeostatic point or equilibrium point with regard to the sodium and potassium. There may be a little bit of a lag effect. It may take a little while for your that equilibrium to reset at a higher level. But is there like a recommended intake of sodium or potassium that you kind of have as a baseline for people, especially on the ketogenic diet where they're needing to supplement that more than a standard diet?
That's a really great question. I could throw out a rule of thumb. What I really like to do though is I will I'll throw out a rule of thumb. What I want to say first though, before people latch on to a number, is um, if you're testing and not guessing, then you'll know exactly if you're high in sodium already, and then I wouldn't. Then my recommendation would change for you, right? And that would be very obvious, very intuitive, and you'd go, oh, okay, well, great. Like in this case with you, I think it's very safe that for the next month, you can cut your sodium intake by half, and you'll be in a good place. In fact, you'll improve the place you're in your health for a number of different reasons. But yeah, I it's difficult to give a RDA. I would say just from a amount, just because it's probably more helpful. A half teaspoon in the morning is probably good, and you can lightly salt your water throughout the rest of the day. You can put in some upgraded potassium into the water and put that in a water bottle, bring it to the gym, bring it to work, bring it on the bike, whatever. You can put in some upgraded magnesium in there because those three are synergistic. So that's what I do daily. As I'll use upgrade magnesium, upgrade potassium, upgrade, and then just sea salt, either Celtic or pink salt. And yeah, really that balances so many different things throughout the body. It's pretty amazing, especially when you're fasting for a prolonged period. It's really essential.
Have you read The Salt Fix by chance?
I haven't. I haven't.
I haven't either, so I feel like I probably should read that before I even ask this. But I know a lot of people that have read it and recommended it, and he recommends a just a obscene amount of sodium, and I don't know the mechanistic properties of what's happening with just a huge load in sodium. So I'd again probably need to read this
Mm.
before I start diving too deeply into it. But I
Sure.
I'm curious because some people have done like just super high doses of sodium, and like once their body equalizes, they tend to notice some benefit. But I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm talking north of 8 grams of sodium a day, and I don't know if that's necessary. But again, I guess you'd have to test that to really know how it's affecting all the other ratios.
Yeah, certainly. I'd be remiss if I suggested that to anyone without knowing first where they are, and then if they wanted to do a large dose, which I wouldn't never recommend a dose that high, unless they're doing an ultra marathon, and then they're also supplementing a lot of magnesium, a lot of potassium, and they're mindful of their calcium, and other among other things, um, and what their pre-existing conditions are. I think a number of different things. Um, I I mean, yeah, that'd be difficult. I think something around 1,500 milligrams is a pretty safe ratio for or percentage for just about everyone. You could go a
Hmm.
little more than that, but some people go, okay, great. What's 1,500 milligrams? And I go, well, you can measure it out on the teaspoon, and what is, what 2,000, 2,200, I think is one teaspoon, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's about, I think, quarter teaspoon of pink salt's about 500 milligrams of sodium. So
Yeah,
yeah, about 2,000.
exactly. About 2,000, right? So, but for most people, they're just going to be measuring something, so they're thinking, all right, so what does that really mean? Yeah, so test and see what your body needs, and understand what demands you're going to plan to be putting on the body, and then go from there. Or you can just guess and leave it up to the gods, as they say. I
Yeah.
don't recommend it though. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's just more intelligent to really have a good feel and use your intuition for something else, but it's a good
totally.
question because it's a great question. A lot of people really would be asking and thinking the same thing. So the main thing I wanted to point out there too is that if you just pound a bunch of sodium, you're going to push out other things. The body will take that and go, oh, well, I guess you need less, fill in the blank, potassium, magnesium, calcium. So yeah, and let's say you're already low in some of these things. Now you're pushing them out even further. So
Right.
um, yeah,
Yeah, there's definitely, I mean, people in the keto space love their salt, and I love my salt, and salt is, critical by all means. But I feel
certainly.
like there's just been this shift where like salt is like the only thing that's highlighted, and that's pretty much all the people give any thought to. So they'll be slamming down a bunch of salt, but it's like, okay, there's other factors in place here besides just the sodium.
Exactly. Yeah, certainly, certainly. So one thing we'll talk about too is trace minerals. For your particular profile here, since on an individual level you're a little bit low on magnesium, your chromium looks pretty good. It could be a little higher. Your zinc's pretty good. It could be a little higher. I'll recommend our upgraded sugar support, like a bottle of that, which also has the nanoized trace minerals in it as well. So I know I thought of that just now because people will say, well, salt will have some trace minerals. That's great. It does. It doesn't mean that you should overconsume it though. So,
Right.
um, and I'm not saying that you're suggesting that, but it is a trend that I've noticed as well too. And it's really easy for us to hone in as people and just go, oh well, this is kind of the current holy grail. Let's do a lot of that. And yeah, what we're really offering here is just a lens that is holistic. So you're seeing everything that's going on really. Um, yeah, yeah. The other thing I wanted to point out on a individual level is your vanadium is pretty good. It could be a touch higher. Um, so I would, after you finish the bottle of upgraded sugar support, which I'll send you, upgraded glucose support has some vanadium in it, which all of these between all the constituents of both of those products, vanadium, zinc, chromium, manganese, and trace minerals, they all support your blood sugar and how your body basically the relationship between insulin and blood sugar, right? As you probably know. So you're already in a really good place, Robert, and we're just going to optimize that a touch more. So yeah, one bottle of each should be fine between now and then the next test. So
I noticed that my boron is like non-existent. Is that just because that test doesn't
oh,
test for boron, or?
exactly, that was a great guess. Yeah, so boron is a false positive for a lot of people. So we can test for it. It's just a special case test that we do. Um, it's good though. It's linked to intelligence and hormone balance, right? So it's something that you do want. Since both your calcium, magnesium, and boron are low, we're getting to the recommendation section. So 1 to 2 bottles of the upgraded Bone Strong is what it's called. It has those three things in it. That would be ideal because we do want to raise all three of those levels. So what we've done is we've basically designed products for the most common problems that we see when we look at results.
Do you notice like in all the testing you've done, do you notice like a general trend line that you see? Like most people, like a 90 percentile, is trending in a deficiency with X, Y, or Z. Like, is there just a common, trend you're seeing?
Yeah, certainly. That's a really good question. So magnesium, potassium, zinc are three things that most people are low in, or they need balancing in, even if they're a little bit elevated, but overall as a whole, they it has a balancing effect. So a safe bet, our upgrade magnesium, that's a great place to start. Again, liquids not in stock right now, but if someone has to have it now, capsules are a great way to go. What else? Yeah, selenium people are usually pretty good on, and then calcium people are usually either high in or good in. So I almost never recommend that someone supplements calcium. In this case, I would recommend that each night you rotate between. So night one, upgrade magnesium. Night two, upgrade Bone Strong because it has some calcium. And just over the course of the next 6 to 8 weeks, you'll run through both of those, and you'll be in a really good spot from a ratio standpoint.
Why do you typically recommend not to supplement calcium? Is most people just have a surplus of it?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And then it's really easy to get calcium from food typically.
Hmm.
But with your dietary constraints, I'm sure that you're not eating a ton of calcium anyway. Um, compared to at least the standard American diet, or SAD for short. So
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, so those are some thoughts there. Um, yeah, other things, really, the results that you'd be looking for from taking these recommendations are sugar cravings going down. They're already probably pretty good for you. Just incessant thoughts of food going down, focus increasing, and then having more calm ability to focus without distraction for even longer. That is something that really I think everyone wants. Your metabolism should go up a bump or two as well, even though it's in a really ideal spot. So a little extra fat burning, something almost no one complains about. Yeah.
So how does this test for it shows here that my metabolic type is fast one. Like how does it compute that?
So that's computed. That's using just hundreds and hundreds of thousands of test results at this point, and that's using different ratios like calcium to phosphorus, sodium to
Gotcha.
magnesium, things like that. So it's an algorithmic output. Yeah.
That makes
Yeah. So
sense.
you're in a good place there. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm looking at my toxic elements, and my mercury is 0.07. So the reference range is anything below 0.18 is good. However, my aluminum is off the charts. I'm at 12.3, and you're supposed to be below 1.8.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
So
is there any reason that I have such high aluminum that you can think of?
Yeah, there's a potential false positive. So you mentioned you used underarm as a sample. So for those people out there listening, they go, "Man, this sounds awesome," but I shaved my head or whatever. You can take hair from any place in the body, and really what you want to do is cut it as close to the skin as possible. So in this case, having high aluminum, that can often be, especially with underarm, due to contamination with deodorant. So even if you washed really well, some deodorants, many in fact, have a aluminum stabilizer in them. So
Gotcha. Gotcha. I just switched to a non-aluminum containing deodorant, but that may have been pre-test, so that would make sense for sure. That may have been post-test rather, so that would make sense.
certainly, yeah, that's what a lot of people do. Really what we see is when you change up your household cleaning products and your personal care products, think sunscreen, lotions, things like that, you start to eliminate a lot of these things. And please do that because those things go down the drain. They end up in our water system. Sure that some of it gets separated out, but most of it doesn't. Then other people that are trying to do the right thing health-wise end up drinking it. At least
Hmm.
some of the time, public water access, for example, at gyms. So maybe you have a RO system with all sorts of stuff at home, but when you go to the gym, you don't have it. So these things are getting in our water system. So yeah, for example, yeah, you have some rubidium, some bismuth, some barium, and a lot of people do titanium, zirconium, and those are really from clean products, personal care products, sunscreens, lotion, things like that. So, and that could have been things that you stopped a long time ago that are just lingering, and they will chelate out of the body and move out of the body more and more as you remineralize the body in a format that it needs. So that's one thing. The other thing is you can do a push catch system, um, and you can look at any heavy metals that you are showing for and say, well, just in case, let's say I am a high in it in aluminum, mercury, let me do at least a level 1 sort of detox for 30 to 90 days. And something like that would be celery juice and bitters to increase that bile flow, uh, and just something like bentonite clay, activated charcoal, and then a transporter like psyllium husk. And if you want to have all that lubricate pretty well, MCT oil is fine. And that will both produce and catch it. So push and catch, basically. And yeah, if you do that once a day, not around any food, yeah, things will be really good. Again, infrared sauna is another thing to be doing. So yeah, I know it's a lot of info, but I hope that was helpful for people.
Yeah, no, for sure. You mentioned chelated, so can you kind of dive into like if a lot of people are looking for electrolytes just over the counter and they see chelated, non-chelated, can you kind of flesh that out what that means exactly and why you would want to go one way or the other?
Yeah, certainly. Well, I'll just say that chelated. I was talking about chelation therapy as it relates to heavy metals, but that's a great question as well. And what that means is there's an amino acid attached to it, and that means that it has to go through the digestive system. Um, Really, that's something you don't want. So, our magnesium, for example, all of our products, but our magnesium doesn't cause digestive distress, doesn't cause loose bowels, for example, because you absorb it cellularly completely. And that's really cool. It also means that you need less of it. And then from an electrolyte standpoint, yeah, the stuff on the shelf, it doesn't absorb well enough. If it did, I wouldn't have done all the last 5 years plus of work that we've done
Yeah,
with
yeah.
upgraded because I didn't finish telling that story, but the first test I ever did, I know we talked about this KetoCon, but to reiterate for people, it was really interesting and really upsetting that when I did that first hair test, I saw I was deficient in things I was taking large doses of. Those are things like magnesium, potassium, so on and so forth. So it was, and I'd been taking it for a while, so a year and a half plus before, you would think, if anything, I'd be high in it, but not the case. And those symptoms for me were debilitating, lose your job level brain fog, where your brain is really just shrouded in brain fog, and it's difficult to think and focus. And, for me, going through chemical engineering, I had a very black and white thing. My brain worked really well. And then at some point I was out of electrolytes. I had been, a wrestler in high school at a really high level. And could have wrestled in college type thing. So I sweated just like you, I'm sure, and a lot of people listening have pushed their bodies so hard for so long that they're just chronically depleted, and they see that the first time they take a test, and that's a great thing to see. It's so vital, because then you can start to take action. Now the problem for me was, all right, great, I'm low in that, but I'm already taking it. So what gives,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah, hopefully that helps people in their lens of viewing this and kind of bringing everything together. It's not what you take, it's what you absorb, and people more and more are saying that, and I love hearing that, because it's so true.
As far as taking and absorbing, is there like a specific, recommended time frame for when you should consume these, or is there like it's just like if you can do it consistently, your body becomes saturated to the right, level, and then you basically just like it's not so much a matter of pre-training before bed. The timing itself doesn't really matter as long as you're taking it consistently on a 24-hour evolving basis, basically.
I would say that you're right on that. Holistically, I would much rather people not stress about. I want them to just take what they need based on their results, and it's just so much better than going, oh well, it's morning, so I can't take X, Y, or Z.
Right.
Magnesium, for example, is so versatile. Potassium, so versatile. Potassium will help your adrenals in the morning, but it won't keep you up. So, I take that twice a day during the day, and same with magnesium. Really, in the morning, it can help your cortisol to burn more smoothly, by just managing that stress response. Really is exactly what it's doing. And then at night, of course, it's going to relax you. It's going to calm you down, going to get you ready to sleep instead of watching another series on Netflix. It's like, it's really essential, because it's a constituent for melatonin. So I never recommend for someone to take a hormone like melatonin, because the body will eventually start to produce less of it, and there will be a dependency. But if you're flying across the world and you want to reset because you just got back from Tokyo, yeah, by all means, reset for a night or two with it, but use it as it should be. Use it with real intention, and
Yeah.
then on a daily basis, use that mineral that your body has to have that it can't make, to make the hormones it needs to make. And that's really the key thing. Is these minerals drive our hormones, right? They're the building blocks. So our planet is elemental, and so are we. So when we optimize our elements in our body by knowing where we stand, then things get better quickly. So, yeah.
I really like that approach. I think you have to go back to the very basic foundational elements in order to build from that. So that makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense. What
certainly.
about water intake? I feel like obviously, hydration level should be in the same conversation as, your electrolytes, your elements, your minerals. So what, like, do you have any general, rules of thumb or guidelines you recommend as far as water consumption and hydration?
Yeah, certainly. That's a really good question for people out there, especially if, let's talk about the extreme ends of things. So, not enough water, everyone knows you can be sluggish, you can have, slow mental function, things like that. You can have constipation, and generally, your body just won't work well. On the other end of the spectrum, you're drinking so much water that you're really pulling out your electrolytes and other among other constituents. So what's too much, what's not enough is really dictated by how much sun and how much you're sweating. So how much you're sweating every day, and your size as a person. Do you weigh 400 pounds? Do you weigh 90 pounds? So figuring out that is a bit of certainly personal optimization that it takes, but I think everyone's safe in drinking 64 ounces of water. And then if you're really doing a lot, yeah, you can drink, 100, you can drink, over 100 ounces of water. But a rule of thumb, I think if you're getting your minerals, it changes. But let's say people are doing this protocol and that's what we're basing it off of. I would say take your weight. So I weigh 200 pounds, divide that by 100 ounces of water. Water won't be the factor that is so off in my health that I need to change, unless I'm, doing a marathon in, the Sahara Desert. My water intake's obviously different, but generally I think it's a great question, and that's my take. What's your take on it?
I mean, again, it kind of depends on like training styles. On like me personally, I trained in a warehouse gym without any air conditioner, and I'm in Arkansas, so it's incredibly humid here. So I'll literally have like just puddles of sweat on the floor around me. So I'll easily drink over a gallon of water a day. Um, and I'll still be dehydrated sometimes, even with that water intake. So I mean, I strive for about a gallon a day, and then I just try to make sure that I've got clear urine as opposed to just dark yellow. That way, I know that I'm not dehydrated. But I'm pretty in tune with my body now to the point where if I start to feel tired, it's easy to like assume that you need some caffeine. But my first go to is like just slam a bunch of water. Like if I'm starting to drag, I'll I'll force myself to drink a big glass of water before I ever reach for any kind of stimulant.
That's a great rule of thumb. Yeah, I really love that. And you're absolutely right. You're someone that's obviously pushing very hard, so your requirements are different, especially because it's humid. Um, I'm here in Texas and in Austin, and it's very similar too. So if I'm in that same sort of environment, I'm going to be drinking over a gallon of water too. And I think most people, also some people, just generally sweat a heck of a lot more than others. I'm a sweater.
Hmm.
I walk from my car to a restaurant at lunch in Austin in the summer, and I'm sweating. Some people, have different detox pathways too. So that's another thing. So if you once you can start to combine, uh, self practice, genetics, hair test results, and all of this, and get a real holistic picture, it's really great. But as far as actionable things, this has always been the lens for me that I've seen move the needle for people, including myself. So, yeah.
No, I like it, man. I'm all about the data, so having this information is interesting for sure. Where can people, interested go to do the same test?
Yeah, certainly. So upgraded formulas, that's upgraded with an ED and formulas with an S. Upgradedformulas.com. You can click on hair test kit at the top, and you can pick up a consultation and a test. And that's really what I ran Robert through, was a 45-minute version of that. And then we explain more and we talk more. But what we go over is your goals and your sleep habits and your current diet and what you're struggling with, where you want to go. And really in 45 minutes, we give you a personalized look at your health that will kind of forever stick with you. 10 years from now, you'll look at your health differently than you do before you ever do one of these. So it's really a valuable gift that we're giving people. So I really believe in it, and it's been such a difference maker in my life, from an energy standpoint, from a focus standpoint. People will lean toward nootropics often or stimulants, like you said, when often what they really need is just to balance the things that need to be balanced.
Totally, totally. And it's good to test this, like with the hair samples. Generally speaking, like on a bi-monthly basis or so. That way, you're getting fresh information each time.
Yeah, what I would say is, your hair grows, new hair growth is as early as 4 weeks, but for most people, 6 to 8 weeks. So if someone's really obsessive, they could do it, and they have the budget for it, they could do it once per month. Uh, a lot of people do it 2 to 3 times a month. I'm sorry, every 2 to 3 months. So
Hmm.
yeah, and then we have some people that are more, they just want to check in and make sure they're not screwing up. They do it once every 6 months. Um, and then for general population that really don't even care about their health, they can do it once a year. So,
Gotcha.
and kind of think of it like a physical or in addition to. Yeah.
I like
So.
it. I'm keen to track this throughout the course of my next competition prep. I feel like, with so many variables changing during the prep, it'd be really interesting to track the data and see how my ratios are adjusting and changing over that course of, 4 to 6 months.
Yeah, certainly. And what really people have to keep in mind is that, you know, just remember why you're testing in the first place. You want to get better, you want to improve. Never, it's never stress about your test results. Just do it. It's just like life philosophy: do what you can, standing where you are. With the tools you have at your disposal. But knowing where you stand is really essential. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I certainly do appreciate it, man. This has been really good for me and hopefully good for the listeners too. I'll definitely include that diagram so people can go to the website and see what this test result looks like from an illustrative standpoint. So they kind of know what to expect. But I mean, this is solid information to have, and I definitely appreciate you taking the time to walk me through it.
Absolutely. And I just want to acknowledge you because it takes courage, being a pro in the health space, with a lot of people that you're impacting. It takes some courage to be able to say, hey, look, let's go over my results. And, you and I, we didn't talk about these before. So, but I just assured you, hey, there's always going to be something to optimize. And, I think this was really essential for people to hear. I certainly wish I had heard it sooner than I had heard it. So if I can just if we can help people just kind of reduce some suffering that they would inevitably go through at some point, then that's a huge, huge thing, and that makes me very, very fulfilled.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And you said the website was upgradedformulas.com?
That's right. Yeah, you can find everything you need to know from products to tests to consultations, blog articles. If you drop in your email, there's a great PDF that I put together for people on mineral deficiency and specifically what each mineral does, and some hidden things that you may not know it does. Each one does. So that's pretty cool, and it's free.
Very cool. Well, I'll certainly link out to that so people can find out more information, man. I think this is very important. So, again, thank you for taking the time to talk with me. And let's definitely keep in touch because I'll probably do another one of these tests, as I'm going through a prep for sure.
Absolutely. Happy to do it. Good talking with you.
Thank you, sir. Take care.